Hello, good evening. I'm sure those who are missing in action will soon be here shortly, but those of you are on time, so we're going to change the order. I believe the police were supposed to be first, but I don't see them. Yeah. Briss?
Do you have handouts?
So public utilities begins on page 124 for those who are interested.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, who? I believe so. I didn't hear otherwise. Welcome, Chris.
If you want to take those for new shows up late, and I can also email them.
Yeah, just,
Everybody's got that.
yeah.
Orla, do you need one? Mayor, would you like me to start, or would you like me to wait?
Please,
for a few
no,
minutes?
let's go. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to present the 2024 NPU budget. This year, the budget reflects the operational costs necessary to meet all of our major priorities, which are continuing to implement the board's priority to support economic development in Norwich, proactive investment in aging utility infrastructure, meeting and exceeding local, state, and federal regulatory requirements, exceeding customer expectations for customer service and reliability, and deploying technology for the benefits of NPU and for the city. One of the most important things that we do is provide a monetary return to the city for owning the utility. Our payment to the city was down the last 2 years due to the economic impacts of COVID. This year's payment, based on the audited gas, electric, and water gross revenues, is $9.1 million, so it's back up again. The sewer revenue is not counted towards the payment to the city, and that's covered because of statutory requirements. And with expected increased revenues from solar seal, the cannabis industry, and other economic growth, we expect the trend to continue to increase in the next few years. Commodity costs are also going up in general, which also will bring up the payment to the city. So we see a good trend for the city going forward, and the NPU payment reduces the taxpayer's burden by 4.4 bills. Now on to revenue and expenses. This year our total revenue is just over $112 million, the highest we've ever seen. We are going to use cash to fund some unexpected cost overruns, and these overruns are driven by inflation and by the supply chain issues that we're seeing. A typical transformer that costs $2,500 used to get a lead time of 4 to 6 weeks and cost roughly $2,000. That transformer is now well over a year's lead time and costing 4 times as much. It's over $12,000. So we're seeing this across the board, mostly impacted on things like transformers, which have been in this extreme shortage. This year, we're able to secure grant funding through our Connecticut centers for 2 very important projects. One is $800,000 for lining the sewer mains in Greenville, and we're also able to get another $800,000 for funding 50% of the Groton emergency water interconnect. That's located at the Preston Legend line and will provide another resource if we have any water issues that cause us to lose our supply, and can also serve any community from East Lyme all the way to Sprague. So this interconnect serves New London, Waterford, Groton, Norwich, Lisbon, and Sprague. So it's a very important interconnection. We're also continuing our commitment to the community. This year, through the Neighborhood Assistance Act and other tax credits, we provided tax credits to local nonprofits, and we able to provide $500,000 to Eastern Connecticut Housing Opportunities (ECHO) to upgrade 3 multifamilies, and also through the Neighborhood Assistance Act, provide $50,000 each to UCFS, St. Francis de Paul, and Buckingham Memorial Home for energy savings projects. So, any charitable organization that that is using the money for energy efficiency, we can provide money. Our employees are also very generous, both with their time and money. In addition to volunteering monthly at the Norwich United Way Food Pantry, they've donated over $30,000 to fund programs in our community. We also support requests for any charitable event that is going on in Norwich, and we continue to work hard to make sure we provide both time and money to help those organizations. As far as the budget process, we presented the budget to the Board of Commissioners on March 28th. We're presenting the budget here tonight to the Council, and our Board of Commissioners will vote on the fiscal year 24 budget either in April or May meeting. So they most likely will vote on next month, but if there's more information they need, we can push it off for a month and provide them additional information. In addition to presenting it at the meeting, we also presented the budget in 2 Finance and Audit Subcommittee meetings. So most of our board has seen the budget at least 3 times and have had the opportunity for 2 meetings to ask questions. This is an exciting time to be in the utility business. And this year, we'll be implementing a new 3-year rate track that will be implemented in the fall that will provide customers competitive and stable rates. We'll be holding public hearings on that this summer. And also, we're going to be beginning construction of our largest wastewater treatment project in the history of North Utilities, our wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So, once again, that opens in the next few months, next few weeks rather, that bid, and we'll be in front of the Council and the Board to get more information and move that project forward. We have also secured federal funding for utility infrastructure projects at historical levels. We have or will receive grants in excess of $67 million for projects totaling approximately at $200 million. We haven't seen this kind of funding since the 70s from the federal government. So we're seeing mostly money in water and sewer. We have a number of projects for electric that are under review. And we will have a very exciting announcement on a major gas grant on April 12th, which is later this week, on Wednesday. So we can't provide any details until that event happens, but I know that you'll all be invited to the ceremony, and it will be a very, very nice grant. This year's budget provides the resources to operate and maintain our services while making significant improvements to address all of our aging infrastructure. We have a great team in place to get it done, and we're looking forward to the next couple of years for all of this funding and the improvements it's going to make to our infrastructure. Do you have any questions for me? Or it also help if
just, I have one quick, and I'll pass it on. The benefit of the Neighborhood Assistance Act and the other program that you outlined, without us investing in those opportunities, those dollars would then go to the state, and then the state would decide where those monies are spent. So this program allows us to direct those monies and keep them local. Yeah. Yeah, because I'll get a call, and people want to know why we're doing that. Well, that's why we're doing that.
It's not ratepayer money, it's tax money that we're able to bring back and help the community.
Yeah, directly. Yep. Yeah, okay. Members, council, questions? Alderwoman Gould.
Thank you both for being here tonight. Can you tell me a little bit more about what this new 3-year rate track is?
Yeah, so 3 years ago, we put the first 3-year rate track in. So essentially, it's setting the gas, water, and sewer rates for a 3-year period to provide stability and predictability for businesses and customers. So this summer, we're doing a cost of service study right now. That cost of service study will dictate what the rates need to be for the next 3 years. We'll have public hearings in the summer timeframe, and then we'll ask the board to approve a rate change in the fall timeframe for implementation in November. So the rates that we had this year were set 3 years ago.
Okay. And other question, natural gas, no, I have 2 more questions, I'm sorry. How much has natural gas expansion been? How is that going? We're getting more residential customers into natural gas, or is that slowed down?
So the funds for the bond are completely expended. That happened this year. We have seen roughly a 25% increase in customers. It's been a great success, but all the low-hanging fruit has been taken advantage of. We are still getting people converting to gas. The gas main runs in front of their home. We'll still connect if it's a reasonable service for free. And we're seeing, I think this year's budget, 40 or so services? About 40 services. So we expect to continue to grow much slower pace.
Okay. And third and final, the natural gas station.
Yep,
On-
station at the Shell station in Norwich, yep.
Right. How's that working out for NPU?
So we were able to get grant money to put that in. It's natural gas vehicle business is not necessarily growing. It may evolve into electric vehicle charging station, or it could evolve into hydrogen in the future. Right now, we have natural gas vehicles still in our fleet, and we do have some vehicles from the outside fueling, but it did not grow. The industry switched from basically, trying to lower emissions to going to zero emissions, which is the electric. So battery-powered vehicles are what we're seeing coming forward in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other members? Alderman Singh.
Thank you. So I guess one of the reason, and you can see if I'm correct, for the 3-year rate track is basically, so there's no abrupt changes in the people's monthly bills
Yeah.
that show up.
So we have rates that are in place. The flexible part of your bill is the PPA and PGA, purchase power adjustment, purchase gas adjustment. Those 2 rates track with commodity levels on the wholesale market.
Okay.
And we do have, on the electric side, a rate stabilization fund that we can use to try to trim the use off of that. So we're always trying to do our best at minimizing the monthly change. We typically will change the PPA and PGA 1 to 2 times a year at most. So it's not going up and
Up
down
and down.
monthly, or very high in the winter peak, or very high in the summer peak. So we try to do that. And by doing a 3-year rating change, it takes away also that, the ability for abrupt changes. So we want to try to keep it stable.
Okay. And the second one is, of course, there is a $54 million in infrastructure money for state of Connecticut for electric vehicle stations. I don't know if you got any luck on getting some of those funds to put some electric vehicle stations in Norwich?
At this time, we have not received any. We've been engaged with the COG and other entities in trying to get a station put in Norwich. At this time, those funds have not been available for utility to receive them. It may just be the municipality that will be able to receive them. They haven't really worked the rules out yet.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
And feel free to call, email any questions, and we'll be happy to answer anything after this meeting as well.
Thank you very much. No, I haven't. No,
We'll look at Deanna.
absolutely, yep, she's here.
68?
67, 68?
Yeah.
Okay, it's on page 60. It's on page 67. Starts with the departmental goals and those things. Then the summary page, the main page is on 68. This budget includes positions that are presently funded by ARPA. They'll be funded by ARPA for next fiscal year, at least through 3/4 of the year or more, depending on the ARPA cash flow. And then at that point, then in next year's budget, not this year's, but next year's budget, we'll have to make a decision, like we always said, which ARPA positions would become permanent general fund positions and which will not be, because it could be because the crisis is over or whatever the reason might be, or it's not effective or anything like that. So we don't need to talk about that, those positions tonight, other than they have been received very well by the department, the additional person, right?
No, we don't have that position.
Oh, we didn't? What happened? I
That
thought we
that
had.
was the position that we let go.
Oh, geez, okay.
Vacant for about a year.
Yeah, it's been difficult to fill some positions. Ironically, that's another one, the grants manager that's in my budget has been unsuccessful twice to fill. So we don't really have a comparison on that. With that, I'll turn it over to Deanna, who will talk you through the budget.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, put that closer to you.
Good evening.
That's
Just a
good.
couple things. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. So I'll first start with what John brought up. We do have one position that was ARPA funded, and that was the Assistant Zoning Enforcement Officer, Blight Enforcement Officer. We did fill that when we first got the ARPA money. Unfortunately, things didn't work out with that particular employee and had to let them go. And then we have had a very difficult time filling it. We've advertised several times, and I'm now looking at just changing the way it's advertised a little better. You know, so we have not filled it. My understanding from Josh is we still have some time. We still have a year's worth of funding for that position. So I'm not obviously asking for money in the budget for that position at this time. I never got a good grasp of how that position really worked out for our department, because they were still in the probationary period, so we never really, you know, got it off the ground to really see how it was working. So still need to try that out and see. There is a need, but we are handling it right now in the office. So I have the copy of the budget here, and I appreciate how it was funded. I did have a couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention. I think it's on page, I don't have my glasses, 68, I want to say.
Yep.
So under seasonal temporary employees, you can see there was a request by my department for $52,000, and it was budgeted at 0. And what that $52,000 was, the Panema Mill project was being funded. They paid for a building permit fee that the council agreed to of $100,000, and $52,000 of that was to be going towards hiring outside inspectors to help us with Panema. Because when that gets going and Hale Mill is just starting up, it will be too much for our office to handle, because what happens at Panema, they move very fast. So we were understood in speaking with John that we were going to have $52,000 put aside for that, of that 100. It's not in the budget. I'm not saying it's not anywhere, but I don't know where that is, and I want to make sure that the department has that money is available to them to get that assistance if we need it. So that's why I had asked for it and it was taken out of here. Josh did send me an email thinking that maybe some of the South Panema Mill was going to be done during this fiscal year, but it hasn't started, and here we are, you know, middle of April, so I just want to make sure that, and, you know, we have monies aside for that. The other thing, under dues and licenses, it did not increase, it stayed exactly the same, and the only concern I have with that, and maybe it's something that Orla might know, there's shared costs with Vision software with the assessor's office, like 20% share of that, 20% of the Vision cloud hosting with the assessor's office, and some other subscriptions. And so we budgeted for that in our department, so, but it's not put in here as an increase, so I just didn't know if that got pushed over to the assessors or where that is.
I'll make sure we look into it.
So, and so the increase that I had asked for, again, was an increase of $9,948, and that covered a bunch of subscriptions, including new online building code books that are coming out. That's the seats that we need, some permit review software for the building officials. So primarily, though, it was cost share with the assessor's office, so $9,948. Otherwise, things are pretty consistent in the office. We appreciate the budget that John prepared, and I have nothing else to add unless you have questions for me.
Real quick, prior years, the inspection issue was very well known, and there was a negotiation that took place with Finn, whereas they agreed to pay for costs for that outside review. Have those discussions occurred?
That's what happened with the $100,000, because they didn't want to pay the building permit fee. And the
Okay.
argument was, we need monies to go towards the cost of an outside inspector. So we calculated that up, and it came to about $52,000 that we had determined. The number of hours per week, I think it was like 15 hours a week at a certain rate. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but it was $52,000 that we figured would cover that length of that project for an outside inspector to assist. So that 100,000 included that in there. So
I've been through
where it is.
okay, I've been through the building, the remediation is complete. I was down there when they had some fire training services provided down there. People out of the Hartford region came down, and a number of our departments were down there for the training that weekend. So I got to see the building cleaned out of the brownfield issues. Where are they as far as their performance in your department? And when do you expect, have you received Mylars yet for build-out, or is that
Yeah, all
pending?
that, they've actually, I believe they have their zoning permits, and they're
Okay.
ready to go. So I don't believe they've submitted the building permit fee of the $100,000 yet, but we have their bond, and I think that they're done being reviewed by the building officials. I don't have that right in front of me, but it's very, very close. So again, it may start in a month, but that's not going to still cover us for next year, so.
Got it.
I just, like I said, I'm not questioning where the money is when the building permit fee comes in. I just want to make sure some of it gets used for the purpose that we had agreed to. So I don't know if it needs to be here or not.
Well, in theory, with permits, your department could at least break even and cover cost if we're really doing our job and helping them to achieve the investment. Yeah. Thank you. Members, Alderman Gould.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I see in your professional services line, you asked for $60,000, and the city manager is proposing $90,000.
Yeah.
What types of services do you use in that line
So,
item of
well,
professional
I'll-
services?
Sure. I'll tell you right away that the 30,000 increase was for the zoning regulations, because the plan of conservation and development will be adopted in August. So pretty soon after that, we need to start really working on those zoning regulations being updated. So we know that $30,000 is going to help us to be able to do some formatting with somebody to organize it. The additional monies we use for brownfields, if we need a brownfields consultant, if we need, in the case of so many different things pop up that we need a consultant for. It might be a structural consultant, and to have money, sometimes it's a planning consultant. LEPs are usually what it is. It's the licensed environmental professionals that we need that additional consultant money. It's also used for if we had a consultant that was specifically like a building code official. If we didn't put it under that, we could put it in under that line item as well if they have their own business and they're using them for that. We've also used monies for historic consultants to help us when we did the historic inventory. Regan Minor, that was just a few thousand, a few $1,000 or a few $100. Sometimes it's very low, maybe a couple hundred, and sometimes it's a little bit more. And if it's more than that, of course, we go out to get bids, estimates from consultants and RFQs, consultant services.
Okay, thank you.
Other members? Pro Tem, please.
Hi, Dana. Thank you for being here tonight.
problem.
Two questions, and maybe this question, because you raised it, maybe this question's for the city manager. The outside services or seasonal temporary employees, $52,000, that was removed from your budget request. Where is that money for these outside contractor building inspectors going to come from? Because the need's going to happen, right? And is that fair? The need is going to
Oh,
happen.
yeah, it's definitely going to happen, and that's why we negotiated that permit fee and asked the council not to waive it.
So, John, so where would that money come from?
Well, I'm not 100% sure that we're going to need it, so I wanted to see what would happen. If we needed it, I would probably take it from manager's contingency, but there's not a 100% chance of using it depending on what happens, right?
The building official said, like last time we had 3 building officials at a time, they could not keep up when Panema was going with the number of units and quick. And we have that Panema and the hotel going to be going right at the same time. So they really do feel that we need that. Again, we will have a permit fee, so I'm not asking it to come from anywhere besides the permit fee. I just don't know where that gets put into the line items in the budget.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay. My second question, and I'm asking every department head that appears before us the same question. If you were held to a 2.5% increase from your projected for this fiscal year, that would be, let's call it $1.3 million, or about $105,000 less than what is in the manager's proposed budget. What impact would that have on your department?
I can't even imagine. I'll just be quite honest with you. We are at the staffing levels that we need to be at. 1 zoning enforcement officer, which is really short for a city. 1 blight officer, which you know is just understaffed for a city. So we already have 2 positions that are doing much more. The 2 assistant building officials and the building official, we need them all. We have 2 admin staff, and they're critical. And then the assistant planner, who does traffic, does all the traffic planning and transportation in the city, and he's literally the right-hand person for me in the office, so I can get administrative things done as well as planning. So I don't know. I have to look at taking from, I think it would be professional services, which means that I'd be begging if we needed a consultant for anything, and, that would be from there. Furniture and equipment, we don't really buy anything. That's our phones pretty much, and the technology and the computer stuff it's never really anything new. Our dues and licenses and subscriptions are licenses for that we need to have for planners. I need to, and we have to get certain credit hours for professional development, so I can't really cut from there. I don't know, that's a really hard question, so it would probably be taking money from professional services, and can't take it from mail. Well, it would be professional services, to be honest with you, because that would be the only place I can't take. I couldn't lose staff. I'll be quite honest with you. Staffing would be a real issue for our department. I think we have a skeleton crew, but we're a really good team right now.
If I can, may I? I might as well, because obviously you're getting this, pretty much the same answer from each department head, that it would impact their budget greatly. The reason they give that answer is because it goes through an extreme amount of scrutiny before it gets to you. So there is not a lot of room to cut. There's not a lot of ancillary services, things like that. They're pretty much salaries and numbers. So, and you'll see that from budget to budget. Without getting too much into the Board of Ed, I can't vouch for that same scrutiny as I do with my own. So that's how I'm probably going to answer. If at the end you see that we're at 2.5 and not doing well, and how can I do that to Board of Ed. So I think there's a different standard, and hopefully the Board of Ed will come up when you have your meetings with them, some ways to save some money. Plus, they control revenue that they have coming in and can do different things with that. So, example, though it's not in the general fund, their reading program could have been phased in over 3 years. That will be something that could happen. It would free up then money in ESSER, and ESSER then could be used for this year for operational while you expend it. Just one example, which may or may not be valid, but that's the type of thing. We don't have a lot of leeway within the departments, and I'm consistently do the cutting before it gets to the council as best I can. So I wanted to get that out. I figured that better sooner rather than later as you're thinking about it. So.
And I can vouch that, I write up every line item, and I write my comments on it before I give it to John and Josh, and most of them say no change in this line item is requested. So I don't ask for an increase. I very much try to stay status quo. And again, if I do ask for it, it's specifically for a reason of the money for FEMA, which is coming out of the permit fee. So as far as I'm concerned, it comes out of the permit fee, and the monies that we needed for the dues and subscriptions because of figuring out those costs with the other shared with the other departments and the things that the building officials need for books and things. Otherwise, it's pretty much status quo for us. I did ask from the capital budget, which we're not funded, $100,000 for open space acquisition, which I ask for every year because I think there's valuable pieces of property out there that the city should have control over, and to put monies aside every year so that we would have at some point a substantial amount if something did come about without having to ask for it in any other way. I think that's a good way to have funds available for important pieces of property. And then I asked for $100,000 in demolition funds because sometimes that comes up with properties that we acquire that are really tear downs. Josh did confirm that as of the email that he sent me on March 9th that he has about $142,000 remaining in the demolition funds right now. So that made me feel better that it's not zero in there. So that's it.
Can I respond to that?
Go right ahead, yes.
So, well, first thing that I'll say in response to the city manager is that I'm not questioning the integrity of the budget. And I know that you're not taking, right, but I'm not questioning, it's just for the record, I am not questioning the integrity of the budget or the due diligence of the department heads or your office or the finance department. My greatest concern, let me back up just one, I'll get to my concern last. I'm asking the same question of everyone so that nobody feels like they're being singled out, right? There are, as I went through this proposed budget, I saw certain departments where I wondered, what justifies that amount of an increase, right? So I'm asking everyone the same question. In the interest of fairness, I'm also asking the same question because I want to hear from you and from the department heads what kind of clearly negative impacts that number would have, right? I think that we need to know that. I think the community needs to know that. The Board of Ed aside, right? This is really not about the Board of Ed's budget. Ad hoc committee meetings will start soon, and we'll have those conversations in a public forum. So now to my greatest concern. My greatest concern is we're at 50 mils in this proposed budget in the CCD. 50 mils. That is completely unacceptable to me. So that's really where this kind of scrutiny is really coming from, is how do I, as a single person on this council, turn to the people who live in a CCD and say, you're gonna pay 50 mils next year? Or even the people, like myself, in the TCD, and say, this is what it's gonna be. And if we transfer some from the CCD to the TCD, and then now that's another conversation, transferring that tax burden.
Yeah, definitely. let me just, the CCD, we kind of said it a little bit with the revenue side of the CCD, because of the way they program the mill rate for the car tax at a cap. They did not compensate adequately or at all for if you have a special district. And we have talked to the legislators about that, and there is an effort to get that reconciled. And it would be legislation. It wouldn't be just a OPM, waving the flag on it or something. So we're cautiously optimistic that that will happen. If it's for us, it also will affect there are many communities that have special districts, fire districts, other things. So it would affect statewide. A small amount of the total budget, but still effective. Without that, then that's why it's kind of an abnormally shifted item. And we're talking like $600,000. So we're talking that it would be enough to erase that drastic increase. So we'll see the trend. It won't happen until they pass the budget. I don't know if that's going to happen in May, or they're going to wait to the end of, to the end of the session in June to do it. Obviously, we're communicating with our legislators to see what the feeling is on that. So I'm hoping that it can happen. If it doesn't, then we have, issues with that, and to be able to shift more money into it. We actually have done a little bit of that with our ARPA money. We have the $1 million. I'm not sure if we explained this right, but the $1 million is not all going into the general fund. We've allocated part of ARPA funds to the special districts to try to mitigate it. But even with that mitigation, it's still up quite a bit. If we have to do more, then that would affect the general mill rate. In essence, you squeeze the bean bag down here, it pops up over here. So it's not a complete solution. But that's what we've done to ameliorate a little bit. I don't know I forget what the number is that we allocated the CCD from the ARP. 400. So it wasn't the total amount of loss, but it was hoping to mitigate it somewhat. Long answer for...
Yep, fair enough. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Other members? Alderman Singh.
Thank you. So I won't challenge your FTEs, but that $52,000, is it just for Panema Mill project, or it will also help otherwise overall city as well if you get that money allocated?
That was specifically budgeted for Panema Mills out of their permit fee, because we did the calculations of how much per hour it would cost us to have somebody there. So the $52,000 was really, it's for the length of the project, so it could be 18 months. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to fall into that 1 year, but it was estimated, I think, over 18 months, $52,000 it would cost to have additional help to cover that.
Okay.
So it was not going to be for other projects, but it will allow the 3 other officials to be free to be able to do the work on the other projects without being understaffed.
Now, we have also in the past sought funds from the developer to pay for these things. Now, I don't recall if he made another outreach on this and what the result was.
Well, this was the outreach. So John, I'm just going to refresh your memory. The
Yeah.
$100,000 that the council agreed upon to be the reduced building permit fee. Because the building permit fee was over $400,000,
Right,
close
right.
to $500,000. So we went back and forth and negotiated and said, I need at least this. And so the minimum was $52,000 to cover the cost of the inspectors out of the $100,000. And the $100,000 is just, it was just a number that covered other things in the office, plan review, things like that.
Well, we'll take a look at it.
It was, but,
Yeah.
so the $100,000 was
Yeah.
covered the 52. That was their contribution, if that makes sense.
I may have looked at it and thought that we still have discussions with Panema about, in the past, they have reimbursed
Well, they had 0 building permit fee.
Right,
That's-
yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah, we were able
Because I didn't
to,
want to go back to the drawing board and ask
And
them.
we were able to obviously leverage that they had 0. This time they have some, but still nothing compared to what it potentially could be. So
Yeah, I don't know how many other towns do something like that.
we'll take another look at it.
The other thing is that $30,000 in, which was minused from assistant blight official, I think last year. This year, we already have that position, that's why it's in the budget.
Can you say that it is?
The $30,000, the projected saving from the vacancy. So, in,
Yeah, that's a projected savings from vacancies that exist now. So we took that as a one-time credit against the salaries. So
so this year.
because they haven't been filled,
And it's not in the budget here. So that position of assistant blight enforcement officer is a 0. It's not funded.
yeah,
in the
it's
budget.
not in this year's.
Because and in the future, we'll have to decide if we're coming forward and asking for it to be funded. But I haven't had a strong inclination that we need the position because we haven't had it filled. We had it filled for just such a short amount of time. I think it would make a big impact, especially on the blight side. I think Rich has some staff with the admins there, but the actual physical going out and having another person out in the field doing blight enforcement would be super helpful.
But then, let's say 2022, 23, projected one for regular employees is 529, right?
Projected
22, 23, projected regular employees, second line.
It was at 9, yep, and it stayed at 9 because it was never funded in the budget. It was funded through ARPA.
Okay. So the way I'm looking is 2022, 23, it's 529, but now the next proposed one is 577, 307. So we're already kind of up than this year, almost 50 grand in the regular employees.
Numbers really quickly here. Page 68.
Yeah, she's got,
It may have been the pay increases if you look at the rates, if you look at the different rates between,
Okay.
like some of the other university, like, try to find a number here. Oh, I can tell you why. Thank you. We had the building code compliance technicians were the 2 building officials, and then they became assistant building officials too.
Okay.
Remember, they were building code compliance techs.
Okay.
We hired at a lower rate, so we saved a little bit of money there, and then they became assistant building officials.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? I have some. What's the caseload of each of your building department members per year?
Oh, boy.
I
So-
totaled up all the permits and the different descriptions
Yeah.
on page 69, and it's around 2,500,
Yeah.
some form or another permit issued.
So per full-time employee, if, those are the building officials, there it shows the number, so it's like.
350?
Around 350
Okay.
per building official. So the numbers of permits are pretty high. We have a lot of violations, as you can see. Let me see if I can here. And like the zoning permits are pretty high. Residential building permits, and let me try that last one. It was 1,400 or so. I said 1,400, 1,500 building permits a year.
You probably don't have this tonight, but it would be helpful, I think, for all of us. The amount of revenue taken in through your department, through all the permit process, if there was a way to have that listed with the line items in the budget, that would help us understand.
Somewhere. Would you have that number or else somewhere? I thought it was
Check to see where we are.
Yeah, I think it's in your budget somewhere. It should-
Yeah, and the revenue.
a whole bunch of it, just my section, but it does talk about it. This year was a significant, we did really well. We had all the last couple of years, we've had Westledge, they had no
Right.
permit deferral, anything discounting their permits. We had the hotel came in, that was 300,000. So we had some significant permits received this year.
So if we go to page 49, That's our revenues are listed. And then the second section is license and permits. Under building permits, the budgeted amount for next year is $806,000. We're anticipating projected for the current year of $950,000.
Not a wash, but it's significant. Thank you. Other questions, members?
Joe has, I think Alderman DeLucia has his doing math in your head. Do you have a question?
No, but I was doing math in my head. Because it's, call it 250 days in a work week, right? So
No.
that means that each one of your building official and your assistant building official are taking on 5 new permits on average per work day. And then it's not just, okay, I just issued this building permit, it's it's a partial inspection, the almost there inspection, the final inspection, all the follow-ups, the emails, the phone calls.
Absolutely. A lot of hand-holding too, people come in, they don't know what they're doing, and it takes a lot of work to get people into the system and how to apply for a permit. The online system, OpenGov, has been really helpful. A lot of people like that, but they still don't know what to upload, or they come into the office and we do it for them, so it's still getting into the system, but there's still a lot of communication with the public and the building officials assisting them. But yeah, the numbers, they do a lot of work. We're really busy in the office, so.
Well, and that's just that one component. I mean, then there's all the other things like, oh, building needs to be condemned, or there was a fire, or,
That's why when you ask the question, where could we, look at trying to find some savings if we could, it definitely wouldn't be with staffing, and we just have to figure out, we would just do the minimum if you needed us to. But, as far as other things to cut down, but it's hard. It's really hard. We're kind of a skeleton crew, and I'm proud of what we get done, what we have.
So if I could follow up?
Sure, go ahead.
So you mentioned earlier that it's difficult to find somebody for that split position, CEO and blight officer. How has the marketplace been for folks that are trained to do this kind of work? It was really tough for a while. I don't know that, I haven't spoken with my industry folks, but it doesn't seem like much has changed on the private sector.
It hasn't. So there's still a shortage of building officials, zoning enforcement officers, blight. People don't necessarily want to do enforcement. I think in all levels, whether it's police or whether it's blight or code stuff, I think that it's, people moving into these type of industries, and they want to be in planning. They don't mind doing things like that are working communities, but it comes down to doing enforcement. It's a skill set, and it's not something that people necessarily want to be drawn towards. I want to do enforcement. So it's hard, and the people that are in these positions are aging out. And so getting younger people to be interested in doing these positions is really hard. Advertising, we have a full spectrum of people that come in that just don't have quite the skill set that we need for doing blight and zoning, because the needs in the zoning are more technical, administrative, and what we really need on this blight side is boots on the ground outside, getting out there and doing enforcement. So it's just, they're kind of a little, they seem like they match, but they're a little different of what the needs are, so it's trying to find that right person that can balance both. So we're gonna keep trying, but, we're just gonna tweak how we advertise it, not necessarily a job description specifically, but just how it's advertised, so it doesn't seem to be one way more than another.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, as you leave us, thank you for being here. Again, I think at the last opportunity we had to talk, I asked that the blight officer reach out to me, because I'd like to include comments from that person in another newsletter going out to NPU. It goes out to the 100 plus utility customers here in Norwich. Be a way to reach out to them individually, as well as the residential and renters and everything. Thank you.
I think that'd be great. really dynamic, and he calls himself the Rose Buster. He doesn't want any wilted roses in the city, you know. He's very, he puts a lot of energy into his job, a lot of his own personal finances and, you know, things that he, you know, buys for his equipment for himself. He's really excited about being here. It's nice to have an employee that's so engaged, and, you know, he spends his own volunteer time in his own community doing Habitat for Humanity and cleaning up his neighborhood. So it's pretty inspirational that way.
Thank you.
Okay, we're a little mixed up with the chief, but he's here now, and we didn't really lose time because we worked out your list, but not least necessarily. Apologize. Now, we did the fire separate from everything. We didn't want you to look at fire.
I used to it, but for some reason I had it tomorrow, the 11th.
That's all the fire departments.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
We might have said public safety, so that might have confused you.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening, Chief.
Chief?
This is on page
74.
72. I got my photo. And the numbers appear on page 74. This is always a challenging budget because there are variables that occur during the year that you don't budget for. I mean, you budget for average events to occur and things, but you don't budget for extraordinary events and things like that. And if we have a number of those, it affects our payroll numbers. We're looking pretty good this year on some of these numbers, but obviously salaries, benefits, and the replacement costs are the major drivers of this department. So with that, I'll leave it to the chief to get into any detail that you need.
Good evening, everybody. As the city manager said, the main drivers for the police department are personnel costs, and that is tied hand in glove to our replacement costs. Police costs cover an officer when he's out on sick, vacation time, or he or she is at the police academy. If the replacement costs aren't funded, that means the beats get left open. If we are not at full staff, oftentimes we are able to switch money between the accounts. So our bottom line, you'll see, go over the budgeted amount. The money is taken from the employee account and gives us the ability to work within our bottom line. The benefit cost is not figured by us. That's figured out by the finance department. So we just submit that based on their projections for health insurance, pension, OPEB, health insurance, everything along those lines. And then other than that, you'll see most of the other lines are consistent. If you have any questions on the individual lines, I'll answer them, or you need a better explanation of the overtime versus replacement overtime versus salary account, or personnel account. I'll try to answer it for you.
One, I want to compliment you bringing more hires in. Our female population is expanding.
Yes,
That 13 now,
13 female officers.
with the two newest sworn in last week. That's good to see the diversity, but it raises the issue of where do they set up shop when they get to work? Because I know the locker system is stretched beyond.
The locker room is capacity for 10 female employees. The dispatchers have all been removed. They change. in their cars or before work themselves. So the female officers themselves are the only employees in the female locker room currently. And one sergeant has also already vacated the locker room, 2 changes in a office because we don't have locker room facilities. It's a challenge. Again, we're very proud to have these young men and women want to be officers in Norwich, but it's a challenge when they get here and they like the agency. It's just we're not doing what we could to make them feel welcoming. And it's not a fault of anybody sitting here. It's just the facts of living in a little town with limited resources. So I think the employees know that we're trying to do things and they're pleased with it, but it is a challenge. We'll come up with some type of workaround, but it's going to be less than ideal just because the building is stretched.
Thank you. I look at the fringe benefit costs, and you look at the salaries, and this is true of any department, but man, it's up there.
Yes, and unfortunately, it's totally out of my control, and I'm not saying that to shift the blame, but the benefit costs are very expensive, but that's part of the reason what brings people into the
Right.
door. It's benefits, and the economy, I don't know where it's going, I wish I did, but having a good benefit package is one of the reasons why officers were on the streets in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I think if the economy turns again, a strong benefit package is one thing that will keep your officers able to fill the officer ranks. You're seeing in other towns where they've actually expanded the benefit packages, trying to retain or recruit officers, as well as other things that are going on in Hartford. That if you had told me 5 years ago, I never would think that some of the benefit proposals that are making it out of committee I never would ever thought that would happen.
Thank you. Members, questions? Pro Tem.
Hi, Chief.
Evening, sir.
So, Pat, I have a couple of questions about the line items in your budget. Number one, your projected replacement cost for the current fiscal year is almost $1.3 million. So you just said a few moments ago that replacement costs are when you have an open beat, you have to pay somebody overtime to fill that beat. All right, that's where the replacement cost is coming from.
Yes.
So my question is, what about the ARPA money that we allocated to the department to try to offset those costs?
I think that's been categorized for hires, and I think like we're at 84 right now, the hires that they brought us up to 84. Officers 86, 87, and 88 are the ARPA funds. And I don't know if we have the ability to transfer that to the replacement cost, but the money that has not been used yet has been earmarked, I believe, for new hires.
That's correct.
Or I don't know if I have the ability to, or if the city has the ability to move that to the replacement cost without being a violation of rules. And that's kind of out of my wheelhouse.
Would that also be the same situation with the overtime costs that are in your budget?
Now, here's where it gets strange. And when they opened up the ARPA funds to gun violence reduction, overtime for investigatory overtime was specifically mentioned by the White House. So that, because you're using it to fund overtime for investigations, is acceptable, where replacement overtime, in my understanding, is not. But I'm not an ARPA guru by any sort of means, but that's my take on it. We have used the ARP money heavily, along with a couple of state grants to lighten the load on the overtime account, and it's worked out pretty well. So
then that breaks into two questions. So back to the replacement costs, your let's just call it at double what your current fiscal year budget is going to be, right? So, 670,000 up to 1.3, where's that money gonna come from?
Most
For
likely.
this fiscal year, I'm saying.
For this fiscal year, a lot of it's gonna come from the employee account, the majority of it, because we're still not full staff, so there's still another officer vacancy. And then we just brought these officers on in the last quarter, so money will be built up along, will be used to offset that.
Okay, so then the second question, thank you for that, all right, because I was missing that piece. So my second question is, where are you on that ARPA money in terms of how much has been expended and how much is left? Because you have brought new officers on, and we're using the ARPA money to pay for those officers right now?
The officer position money is still available, but it's positions 86, 87, 88. So right now, we're at 84.
Right.
So we have an officer already lined up, a female, looking very good for July's academy class. And if we have any other officers, they will be coming out of that ARP money, because that transcends the fiscal year, not by a lot. But that's where we're looking to go with that area.
And that's all got to happen before December of 2024?
A portion of them.
Oh,
And then
okay.
we have retirements, and, I know of at least one retirement, so that may offset and possibly another departure. So like always happens, just when we start getting where we're supposed to be, we're gonna one step forward, two steps back.
Well, thank you for that, because that was my next question, is what your attrition rate looks like to you at
Yeah,
this
it's
point.
tough to forecast. We lose people for the strangest reasons, and, retirements are easy to chart. Once you get your time in, you know that the day is coming, just when. But one of the things we've been going through post-pandemic is people just losing heart for the job and just leaving. Now, if the economy turns, I don't know if people will be doing that. Right now, it's still a worker's market, but I don't know how much longer that's going to last. So an economic downturn will probably make more people stay in policing, which is good and bad. It's good we have vacancies, bad because the person's staying for the right reason. It's a career job. You want to kind of stay there to make a difference, not just for salary and benefits, but some people may.
Yeah, well, for all the thankless jobs, right, they are all suffering right now, right?
Very much so.
Right.
Very much so, because it's an employee's market.
All right, last question, I promise. I've asked every department head the same question and intend to continue that. If we held you to a 2.5% budget increase from your current budget, and I believe I worked off of your projected, so that would put you at $18,800,000, just under that. That would be $415,000 less than what the city manager has proposed in this budget. What would the impacts of that be on your department? How would you, if you had to, how would you absorb that?
The old, ARCO question, if you remember the ARCO books, personnel. It's either I'm not hiring people or I'm not filling jobs. So it's less officers on the street, either full-time or we're not. If Officer Smith takes the night off, we won't fill her job. Or say if we usually have 8 officers on patrol, we'll go down to 5 or 4. So it's less officers on the street. It's the only way to make that type of impact up. You could try going down the line and cut every line item to that number, do the increase and do it fairly, but that usually doesn't work because some of the numbers are just set to what they are. Fuel number, I don't set the fuel number. I think it's overly optimistic. So that money, if it's off, may have to come up with somebody else from somewhere else. Benefits. There's nothing, I can't adjust that. I can't give people less benefits, so.
Right, yeah.
Contractually, it is a little.
Yeah, collective bargaining off the table, right.
Yeah, so it really comes down to the only way to do it efficiently is through personnel. And It's either hire less or fill less jobs, but either way, it equals to less officers on the streets protecting citizens.
And, excuse me, Mayor, I did have one more. I know I just said last one, but it wasn't, and I know it never is with me. But this is more of relying on your expertise. Adding one civilian dispatcher, you requested 2. With the radio transition and everything that's going on, for this coming fiscal year, if it stays at 10, that number 10, how do you see the dispatch center functioning in terms of its efficiency and greater safety, greater workload?
It's, with the additional person?
With the additional person, just
It's always a
the one instead of 2.
One instead of the 2, you're moving in the right direction. Believe it or not, civilian dispatchers are faced with the same problem as the officers. Not a lot of people beating our door down. So to hire 2, that's a pretty heavy ask. I would always say if you fund me for 2, which is going to be great. But I think the city manager is being prudent here, getting 1. We're going to work with the union, get a little creative. It might be a power shift by charting the calls to see where the sweet spot is and have that 3rd dispatcher come in and work those times. So we're trying to, weigh the most calls for police and fire. It might be 10 at night to 6 in the morning, could be a 6 at night to 2 in the morning type situation. And if Tuesday through Sunday is your busy time, it might be Tuesday through Sunday. Trying to do stuff like that, or if someone's out for a long-term injury or personal illness, move them into that hole so we're not beating up the rest of the staff to do it. Once we move forward, the union's in agreement that we're going to look at staffing the city manager and negotiate that with them. We didn't change the staffing levels in the contract because we know it's going to take time to get to a new, brave new world of staffing. So it's baby steps. I think it's needed. It's always bothered me the way we staff, but I realize this is a tough year. It's not going to get any better, and to drop 4 or 5 dispatchers on is going to be a challenge. And then here comes the facility again. If you get a chance, someday, Groton Fire Alarm, their dispatch center is probably the size of this stage. Our dispatch center is probably to the city manager's desk to the railing. So having all the people is great. We don't have the ability to actually get them working or have room to staff up should a hurricane come, a active shooter incident, or anything like that. So we're up against the facility too. So ramping up the staffing slowly is better, and having an extra person, it allows us to take a dispatcher off to do the provisioning of building the CAD system, so it's not like, that dispatcher's working on it, everybody else is covering for him. We can assign somebody and have this person fill in. Not ideal, but better than nothing.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions? Alderman Singh.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my other concern with the dispatch area, because I've seen that, how tight it is, and you have your microwave there and, a lot of other food stuff. So do you have enough space to actually accommodate a person there?
We have a space right now, where they sit at where the desk officer sits, and then that officer would jump in for relief purposes when they go to take their meals. Because of our staffing concerns over the years, the dispatchers, when I first got there, used to leave the room to get their break and go downstairs. They now all eat at their workstations, which is good for us. We get, a full 8 hours of labor from them, but it's not good for the dispatchers because sometimes you need just to get out, just take a break, and it's not ideal to have someone sit in there all day because dispatchers is the forgotten first responders a lot of times, and they where I may have one traumatic call a night or a month, they have them all, and they tend to take on the trauma themselves because they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So it's not ideal. Nothing we do is ideal. We just do the best we can. but I think this is a step in the right way of trying to get it where we should be and where the city can be proud of.
Thank you. And another question might be for John, like, what are the specific reasons we are adding 25,000 in communication line item and we are deducting 45 grand from the vehicle fuel? Are we investing in some electrical vehicles for PD or like, I know it's a fluctuating commodity, so.
It's been hard to get our arms around fuel, you know that being in the business, but,
I sold my gas station, so I'm
I know
not
you did.
no longer in that
so you don't have
business.
to worry about it as much, but we do. And we still project that the final fuel costs will be less than they were a year ago at this point when they really spiked. But again, there are things that you don't count on, like the Saudi conglomerate all of a sudden cutting back on production, and it affects the market like the next day. It's those kind of things you can't predict, and or other things in global warfare, whatever it is that could happen, can obviously affect that. But based on purely economics and where we are as with inflation stabilizing and going down in some areas, we've taken a middle of the road type of thing.
Okay.
We may be too aggressive in that. If we are, we'll find out on that.
And
I
what-
think I pushed it more than
Looks like
Josh,
it, yeah.
to be more aggressive.
The other thing was communication. So what's covered within that communication line item?
I got that. I'll take that one. Communications obviously is our phone. It's also, it's where our payment to Motorola for the management of our radio system. So you see that that's a fixed cost. Right now, last year was year one, this is year two, and it charts out, so it increases over each year. Next year, not this fiscal year, the year after, when the fire service comes out, that number will adjust again.
Okay.
I know I've talked to John and Josh about this, just because it's in my account and people think I'm doing something weird. I'd love to have the communication, once we get everyone in the city onto the thing, come out and be its own standalone number, because people always ask, what are you doing? Why are your phones so expensive? It's not. It's the funding for the radio system, and we have to make yearly payments to Motorola. We get great service, gets into the state radio system, the time to get a tech on scene is phenomenal, but there's a cost of doing business, and that's where it's in the account.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Alderwoman Gould?
Just to follow up on that, thank you for being here tonight, Chief.
I took it a little earlier.
That's all right. Body cameras and the storage for body camera footage, is that also in that communications budget?
No. Body cameras, we paid for that up front, and we built our own server storage. In the capital budget, though, you're going to see $319,000 for new body cameras. I will not have a long answer to a quick question. When we went to body cameras, we picked WatchGuard as a vendor. They have great service. We got our WatchGuard cameras. They had Model X. The company then, because it's such a good company, got acquired by Motorola. Motorola has a different business model, and they changed. They stopped supporting the body cameras and introduced a new model. So, although we had our body cams probably only 3 years in the field, we hope to get 10. Now Motorola is kind of directing us to the other ones, because as cameras get damaged or fail, we turn around time for parts are excessive, to be honest with you. Be it charging stations and all that. So they're driving us to a camera, new camera that it was cloud-based storage, where right now we use on-premise storage. But that is, it's $1,000 fee for the camera, and the storage is limited and you don't pay for it. So that's where we stand. So if anyone saw that in the capital, that's why we had to switch body cameras.
Okay, which leads me to my, so $319,000, that's for new body cameras for all the officers
Yes.
who presently have them now?
Yep.
Okay, which leads me to the next. The pistols, the new guns, I know that we're paying those out of police cruisers. You asked for 5, you're getting 3.
3. 4 would be ideal. Beggars can't be choosers. What happens is if you looked at the cruiser account right now, you'll see there's a large number of money in the cruiser account, a large sum of money. It's not because we can't get, we're not trying to buy cruisers, it's just we can't get them. There's been delays in getting them and shipping them, especially with the Fords. So we're trying, pretty much every dollar of that money that's in the cruiser account currently is spoken for a car that's on order. And by taking it under 4, we're going to get to an area we don't like to be, which is cars in excess of 100,000 miles, because that means every time something goes wrong catastrophically, it's on the city's dime. I think I've told you guys, apologize for repeating the story, but it's worth hearing. We had a cruiser with 94,000 miles have a major engine failure that will cost us $10,000 to $12,000 to fix, and countless man hours that, because we were in the $100,000 threshold and the warranty still applied, cost us nothing other than time. So that being said, the repairs take longer, parts take longer to get in, so we're looking at longer downtimes for cruisers to come in, to the point where we're actually, we're forced to buy used state police cars, just try to close the gap until we get to the point where cruisers will start coming in. If anyone's asked, I'll just throw it out there because someone did mention electric vehicles. Not there yet for law enforcement, but in my lifetime we'll be buying electric police cars. It is coming.
I think it'll be closer than your lifetime. I'm thinking 5 years.
Oh,
It'll be-
definitely. In my career.
Yeah, career, don't say your lifetime, that
In my
could
career,
be,
it-
hopefully that's like a long time,
Yeah,
you know.
tell me about it. Yeah, we'll be buying, within the next 2 to 5 years, I'd have to say we'll be buying electric cars. Right now, they're just incredibly expensive, and, the range is like the 200-mile range. If we get a little bit longer on the range, it's just harder, and then the charging, have it down for fast charging would be better, because most of
Yeah.
our cars are on the road.
You have to have it at least go through 3 shifts, if you can. And if you can't, then it's a real problem with electric. So you have to have improved storage or battery storage power on that. If I may just get back to the autos for a second, it's really an intolerable situation. You get in the queue to get cars, and it's up to, how long are we waiting now? It's-
8 months to a year before you can. And I had long talks with a Ford dealer last year at a show, and they had orders for the Fords, 112,000 vehicles they had orders for. They only had 75,000 production spots, and you just canceled everybody else's order. So you had money, you had it budgeted, you had the ability to buy a car, and Ford can't do it. Long talks with them. They'd rather have cars sit on dealership lots because the dealers have to be fed than have sell police cars. So they will give up the guaranteed police car sale to make sure the production line meets the cars on the dealership lots. So,
Well, they don't make as much on police cars anyway, because of competitive bidding and so they don't give it the attention that it needs. And the other problem is, and the costs have inflated over the last
1 year
5
increase for
years.
Fords this year were $8,000 per car.
Yeah, and then they have the nerve, because they can't fulfill it in the year you order it, that it gives the next model year, and of course, the next model year is never lower than the previous model year, so you get hit both ways on it. And we have to wait longer on cars, costs us
When
more
they
money
change
to
model years,
maintain.
all our cages and NDT brackets and all the equipment doesn't fit. So that gets to be another expense that comes out of our cruiser account. When we update the car, all the stuff we have, we used to just swap from car to car to car, we'll get probably 6 to 8 years out of it. Right now, we're getting 3 to 4 years before they're changing the models on the inside, making it so that you have to buy new equipment.
Yeah, I would suggest that this is a national issue that national governments should get into, and I've never heard of any hearings about this kind of stuff, and
No.
I think it's, between the cost and the delays and whatnot, We're not unique to it at all. And you can imagine a place like New York City that replaces 2,000 cars a year, they take up, or maybe more, I don't know what they have.
Talking to the fleet facility with the state police, we've gotten friendly with trying to do stopgap things. They'll order 100 cars and they'll get like 22.
Yeah, so
And that's you just all you're ever going to get. You can ask all you want, that's all you're going to get.
so it's a real problem that we can't solve at the local level. It has to, the market is not promoting it because automobile manufacturers make more money on non-police packages than they do on this. So there's not an economic incentive to make any more. They make enough to kind of keep people satisfied to a certain extent, so.
Now, the fourth car, that was, like I said, we asked for 5. I'd rather see 4 than 3, just because when we're charting out, keep in mind, it's almost a year and a half away from that car to arrive here, and then we have collisions and various issues, so we're trying to make sure that 4 gets a little bit better than having the extended downtimes. So I know it's a tight budget here, and I'm not looking to beg, but if there was one area, returning the 4th car would be something that would help. It's not like, July 2nd, I'll go buy a car. It's not. I'm looking for, a car delivery in May of 2024. So that's how far out we're trying to track. And that's, again, kudos to Captain Vega. He projects it to a minute of mileage, and then winter comes and ice storms and screws up our map.
Yeah, we basically are getting 3 cars for what we used to get 4 not that long ago. So it hurts. I try to keep the budget stable, but then it's either you do less cars, or you spend more money, or you get to the root of the problem, which I don't know how that'll be solved exactly. So it is an issue.
Do we ever buy cars at auction? Or have we purchased any cars this year at auction?
No, we have bought 5 state police cruisers this year to kind of offset us, stop the bleeding. They were $100 a car. They're city garage. If you see trooper cars at the state city garage, that's ours.
Bless you.
They're the gray Crown Vics. We'll be giving them to the school resource officers. They're not fit for frontline duty, but if we can give them to the SROs and then to our detectives, that may give us a little bit of ability to stem the tide and keep the patrol cars on the fleet a little bit longer. But we're up against that 100,000, and then, then it gets expensive for parts, delays for parts, and man hours at the garage. So it's, that was a stopgap thing. So we did do an emergency kind of punt this year with city manager's approval to get us through. But that's how bad it is when you get short cars and you don't know when they come. And, you get assigned a VIN number, and that doesn't mean it's coming next week. Doesn't mean it's like 6 months from now when you get your VIN number that the car's going to arrive.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick
Go
comment.
ahead. Yep, please.
So the reason I asked Chris when he was here at NPU that if he has access to get any of those $54 million that state have in infrastructure money for EV station, but I think it might be a good idea if you share your vision that, we would like to get some of the electric vehicles for the city, or this is our vision for it, then he might work on creating some of the infrastructure for us. Because those EV stations, of course, cost a fortune as well. And if we can get through NPU, that will be great for overall purposes. Because if we want those electric vehicles, we need infrastructure. So, that's something you guys can look into or share your vision with NPU on that. Thank you.
Well, we've been working on this behind the scenes for almost since I got here. Maybe when I got here, I got briefed on it. It was just before I got here that the previous referendum was defeated a few years earlier.
2012. Yeah. So that the infrastructure would have to bid for electric vehicle charging stations in any new police facility that we possibly would have. My concern, again, and I don't mind electric vehicles, we'll be in them soon enough, I just want to get that charging time down. So we can turn them around. It'd almost be better if we could pop the battery pack out and put a new battery pack in, like we do with our portable radios, if they had a public safety version. But that is something that we're going to be up against a challenge very soon, is how and where do we going to charge the police vehicles, and what's the footprint required for a charging station? I don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Vehicles run basically 24/7. They don't shut off. Is an electric car actually practical for a police car? Has the technology advanced enough with the capacity and the batteries?
Not currently. If there was, for departments that have take-home cars, I would say it might be a little bit better situation. But the batteries, you're still looking at 200 or 300 miles. An average shift could be anywhere from 50 to 100 miles, and then catastrophe happens, a fire happens, or a shooting or something like that, where the car has to be on the road for 20 or 30 hours straight, or you're shutting down a road because of a natural disaster. That's where the rub is in that operation. What are you going to do? Do you drive the truck out there and plug them in? Do you swap the cars out? And what do you need? Do you need, every 4 cars, you need a shuttle car, a spare car? That's what is going to face the municipal departments. In New York City, it probably has hundreds of thousands of vehicles. I don't know how they would ever manage an electric fleet. And I'm sure they have them now, but when the whole fleet's electric, how do you make that work? How do you get them all to the charging stations?
Well, that'll be the key to the technology. The charging has to come down in time. They have some now, but it has to be practical and cost-effective for us to have 10 charging stations at the police station and take only 2 or 3 hours to turn over a full charge. And it's got to be more than the minimum, let's say 200, because as the chief says, there's a lot of idling time, which aren't mileage, which still chews up a battery. It almost chews up almost the same amount as if when you're driving it, depending on the inertia of, stopping and starting and things like that. So they'll overcome it. There's some charging facilities now that do it at a rate that's less than 2 hours. Some cars can do it in an hour, but they're very high-end cars that are pretty complex. They don't happen now.
A referendum on electric vehicles, but then you have the problem we had when we went from the Chevys to the Fords. You have a split fleet, so your mechanics have to be cross-trained. They have to be trained in electric vehicles and maintain parts for 2 different vehicles as you transition into the electric world. So it's
one thing we won't worry about is the acceleration. The electric cars are
incredibly
amazingly can beat off the line any 400 cubic inch police package. Not that we do a lot of high speed anymore, knock on wood, but you always need some reserve if you need it. Yeah.
You've talked about Ford and their reluctance or deliberate decision not to provide the cage and everything that goes inside the car. Is it that much different from a different automaker?
It's specifically made for it becomes part of the crash system, so it has to be crash certified. It's not like back in the day, I think the city garage used to make the cages themselves. Now they have to be certified and for that vehicle model. If you look at a 20, and forgive me if I get my model years wrong, say a 2018 Ford Explorer to a 2019 Ford Explorer, they're completely different vehicles on completely different chassis. Although they look similar, they're not the same vehicle at all. So everything in them is in a different location, and it's just, the body looks similar, but nothing else under it from the body down is the same.
And then put all that weight and all those lights and everything on an electric vehicle? Please. I mean, technology's just not there.
No,
Not yet. Soon. It's coming soon.
it will be, yeah. And they have almost there with interstate trucks. They're not quite there either. And that'll be a big payback, obviously, in pollution. I mean, the trucks, diesel trucks are the biggest contributor to large particle pollution, you know. But to pull a 20-ton truck is, puts a lot of challenge to, you know, battery storage on that.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, that completes tonight, then, City Council. Tomorrow is strictly Fire Department. It's the 5 volunteers and the city, and then the CCD budget and emergency management. So it's dedicated to fire tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you.